Evil beware.
Thanks. Thanks. Hello.
The Order welcomes you.
Greetings.
Good evening.
Stay a while and listen.
The Order welcomes you.
Good evening.
Yes?
Greetings. The Order welcomes you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Good day.
Hello.
Good day.
Wanderer itself into a great and terrifying entity.
Para sa pamilya, lahat ibibigay ko. Kahit pagod, kahit puyat, laging sila muna. Saka na ako.
Pero baka hindi mo ramdaman.
Closest to my heart.
Drink smart for your heart. Del Monte Heart Smart.
Before time, before light, before dark, before the realms of this universe had even existed,
Greetings.
there was one realm, a realm of light, one of immense beauty and wonder, known only as the Pearl. Only one being had existed at this point in time. Many may come to know this entity as God, as he contained immense power and would pave the way for the creation of this universe. The entity known as Anu had occupied this realm. Others would call him the Diamond Warrior, or the One. Anu was comprised of crystals. However, what was contained within would birth something truly terrifying, something that would bring out terror, hatred, destruction upon those who would oppose them. Anu lived peacefully in his isolation, being able to create anything he wished to see, companions he wished to live among, or tastes he wished to gorge upon. One fateful day, however, he looked upon his own reflection, gazing deep within himself to see that his emotions were unchecked. Even though he had happiness in his own isolation, he saw that there was a great sadness in his life. In his own self-interest, Anu decided to purify himself with his own great power, hoping to become pure, and so he did. And once the ritual was over and the darkness and great sadness had been removed from oneself, Anu would feel overjoyed to be made free of such a burden that manifested itself into a great and terrifying entity of its own making. There Anu was made a witness to the darkness in the clear sky, with storm clouds brewing as if they were coming from the energy itself. The clouds grew darker and darker until the clouds and the dark energy had become one sickly black color. Anu felt a great tremor in the realm of the pearl as something came slithering and crawling out of the storm. The energy had manifested itself into the form of a colossal beast with 7 necks like a hydra, each spawning one head that appeared to look like they belonged once to a great dragon. The beast would be later known as Taphamet, the true primeval. Feeling the great sadness at its core, its very being, the emotion soon turned into great hatred for this realm and towards Anu, the one that had cast it out. The beast would invoke terror towards him by using this hatred to begin its destruction of the realm, burning the lands, scorching the many companions Anu had given birth to. The waters boiled, and Anu knew that he had to put this evil to an end. The two would battle against each other, a conflict that would be eons in the making, continuing on for millennia. With each blow, the realm's outer walls would weaken, and with one final assault, Anu and Taphamet would build up as much power as they could muster, almost looking like the payoff would never come, with how long it took for them to summon all of their strength into one final blow. Suddenly, as the two entities emitted their energy out towards each other, the blast had reached their targets. A huge shockwave could be felt rippling outward, and the pearl cracked under the immense pressure, leaking in light and darkness into the space around them, creating a new world. Taphamet soon fell into the dark void. Anu would scream a blood-curdling scream as he felt his very being coming undone. The crystal facets of his body began to shatter, just as if the pearl had been his true body all along, and he was a warden for the prime evil. The light gave birth to a land that almost seemed to clash with the darkness, with Anu's divine consciousness being sent into a different realm outside of this newly born universe. His body, however, wasn't as fortunate, with one of his eyes becoming the world stone for this new land, where it would remain, with the earthen boulders clustering around itself. Anu's spine would unravel, reaching far into the darkness, burning anything it touched with the hot, pure light of Anu's being and power. Out in the dark of this new world remained a husk of what Baphomet had once been. As the body slowed and came to a graceful halt, the body would become the breeding ground for all matters of evil. Baphomet's flesh scarred the lands and ultimately became the foundations of the burning hells and the realms that resided within. Over the countless centuries, eventually maggots began to form inside Baphomet's corpse, which spawned the demons into this new, horrifying world of lava and terror. The heads of those once great and terrifying Baphomet had begun to spawn the most destructive and terrible creatures even known imaginable. These would be later known as Diablo, the Lord of Terror, Mephisto, the Lord of Hatred, Baal, the Lord of Destruction, and Dariel, the Maiden of Anguish, Duriel, the Lord of Pain, Belial, the Lord of Lies, and Asmodan, the Lord of Sin. However, as these demons had been developing their powers and challenged each other for dominance, the high heavens had been forming with the spine of Anu forming the crystal arc. The heavens soon took shape around this landmark, and slowly over time, the angels would begin to populate these halls of light, floors that reflected oneself back at them, fountains that poured holy water outward. The heavens would reach outward to the skies, reaching well above the clouds. The crystal arc, however, was to be what created the angels. Whenever the center vibrated, a new angel would be born, each angel carrying an aspect with it, a value of Anu. In these early days, 5 angels had been selected to lead the angels in any quest. These angels had been selected due to being the most in tune with Anu's virtues: valor, justice, wisdom, hope, fate. Ethereal had been chosen to be the Archangel of Fate, with his extraordinary ability to unravel the binds of time and to see all that will become of those who inhabit the lands of creation. Uriel was the next to be chosen as the Archangel of Hope, with the power of hope flowing through her, embracing her. She would be a great mentor, counselor, meditator, and when the time would soon come, a great warrior. Imperius was chosen next to be the Archangel of Valor. With the power of courage in the face of uncertain outcomes, Imperius was indeed the warrior the angels would come to be in great need of. He was a true warrior, falling to no adversary other than his great pride. Tyrael was the next to be chosen to be the Archangel of Justice. He would judge those under his mercy fairly and truly, and would be the maverick of the group. And finally, Malthael had been chosen to become the Archangel of Wisdom. With his great knowledge and power, he had been chosen to lead the other members. These 5 righteous and powerful entities would come together to lead the angels as the Angerous Council. As for the pearl itself, the remnants would be later discovered and would become to be known as Pandemonium, with a great light being scarred into the fabric of reality, showing all those who dwell upon it just how violent the birth of creation had been. Pandemonium stands as the nexus in between the two sides between the burning hells and the high heavens. The Angerous Council in their time of peace would help to design the Silver City. However, like all things in these worlds, just like the tale of Anu and Baphomet, peace would not last for long. Soon the two sides would seek expansion into the nearby lands, and the demons would attempt to find something other than their brothers or sister to conquer. Eventually, over the centuries, the two sides would find each other after Tyrael had built a fortress around Pandemonium and the World Stone, which is something the two sides had desired, and the eternal conflict would commence. However, would the same result occur from this war, or would they be able to find common ground for the good of all who dwell within this new realm of both light and dark, good and evil. Or would they forever be locked in combat with one another? What could be the consequences of these actions? Welcome to the complete history of the Diablo universe.
Hey, what's up? Are you sleep deprived? Try the Narcolepsy Challenge on Ascension Custom WoW, One Life Hardcore mode. You have a fatigue bar because you were out all night trying to recapture your lost youth, and now you're really tired because you're an adult in your mid-30s. It drains you when you move because you'd rather be at home asleep. Can you level up when you're this tired? I don't know, but you may as well try. If your fatigue bar hits 0, you fall asleep and never wake up. I've been informed that that's called dying. But if you make it to level cap, you get big endgame loot so you can jump right into dungeons and raids. Makes the all-nighter worth it, right? Wrong. Step into rested areas like inns to take a small nap, you fucking grandpa. Refresh your fatigue bar before adventuring again. Experience what it's like to be an adult with a 9 to 5. Try the hardcore Narcolepsy Challenge on Ascension Custom WoW.
Stay a while and listen.
In the preceding battles, the two sides of angels and demons would vie for dominance of the lands in between the burning hells and the high heavens. Believing only absolute order could govern the two realms, the Angerous Council would take to the battlements, aiding their brothers and sisters in battle against the demonic brethren, who were led by the prime evils Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal, who claimed that darkness and chaos had been at the center of all things. Over the eons, the two sides would battle within pandemonium, attempting to push the other back to their respective side. However, even though the archangels had been successful in killing these evils, they had failed to ultimately destroy them, resulting in them returning over and over again. The two sides believed that whoever controlled the World Stone would gain the ability to shape reality and create life as they saw it to be. The angels would use the World Stone to create worlds in perfect order and harmony, in line with their ideals and virtues. However, the demons would use such a raw power to create engines for their own uses, ones of destruction, and to create worlds of hatred, terror, and destruction. However, over the countless eons, the two sides were never able to remain in control of this stone, resulting in these worlds withering and dying out, with the fires of war rinsing over them of any goodness or destructive capabilities. Over time, however, the World Stone became poisoned over the two sides, tugging and pulling for dominance in the war. Within these battles, the Angerous Council would fight amongst the other angels who had been within their ranks. Tyrael in time would find himself in great peril when Imperius would rush to his aid, saving him, and in other times Tyrael would find himself saving Imperius from these perils of warfare. Azmodan at this time would become engaged with Tyrael, and in their battle near the Pandemonium Fortress, Azmodan would find great difficulty in defeating the Archangel, and when Tyrael was about to deliver the final blow, one of his fellow angels would cry out to him, asking for his assistance. Defeating Azmodan would be most beneficial in the war for the high heavens. However, he felt that he couldn't turn his back on his comrade, and so allowed Azmodan to escape back into the darkness. Inarius, who was under Tyrael's command, would lead a battalion of angels into fighting an army of demons led by Azmodan at a later date. where the results of the battle are unknown. However, in an unrelated battle, Inarius would fall from grace, being struck down and marooned, being forced to watch the consequences of his capture, as his brothers and sisters had been torn to shreds with their essences being seen leaking from their crumpled armor as the darkness slowly swallowed him whole. After recapping on countless evils, brutality, and the losses of both angels and demons throughout the eons of battle, Inarius would reawaken in chains when he saw that he wasn't alone. He would go on a rant to his captor that he desired for a way out of the conflict of creation. To his surprise, the captor broke his chains and allowed him to escape with a plan to rattle through his mind. Along with her name, she had been Lilith, the daughter of Mephisto, the daughter of hatred. She would tell the angel that the two would meet again. Inarius was completely captivated by her. In the times of the great conflict, Mephisto had abused his daughter over and over again with his great hatred. She had indeed suffered from what made his power, forcing her out and to rebel against him. This partnership, however, was to be the very first occurrence when an angel and a demon had set their differences aside for the ground of common good. Inarius had returned to the high heavens, convincing those who followed him into a desperate plan to escape the growing conflict, and Lilith did the same with those closest to her. The following battle at Pandemonium, the two sides would fight angels against demons. However, while the two sides were occupied in this battle, Inarius and Lilith led their renegades to the World Stone, where they would convene together, creating a ritual to send the artifact to a plane outside of their realm, a pocket dimension. Inarius would then use the World Stone to form the Rocky Mountains, the dense jungles and forests, the oceans and swamps, and the burning deserts, creating a new world with Mount Arreat swallowing up the World Stone. Once Inarius was to be satisfied with the creation, he and Lilith, along with their combined renegade force, would step into the new world, and they would hear nothing but the peaceful ambience, which made them feel truly at peace at last, as they had been busy building the Temple of the Firstborn, which had been located where they first had stepped into the world. The clash between demons and angels had ceased when they could no longer feel the presence of the World Stone. This had brought an eon-long war swiftly to an end, since there was no end goal anymore, and the two sides had gone their separate ways. However, like many things, this conflict would arise again. However, it would be on a different plane of existence than the burning landscape the demons and angels had created in the wake of their war. The great conflict was at a standstill, and the two sides focused on regaining their strength in the absence of the World Stone. Eventually, the Primevals caught wind of this, and after some speculation, Baal would suggest Lilith had something to do with it. Due to her absence, Baal would tell his brothers that they need to find her and rip her limb from limb. However, little did he know that she was far away from their reach, and it would be quite a while until they would discover the land of Sanctuary. After forming the lands and finishing the construction of the temple, Inarius would see this new world to be a sanctuary for both angels and demons, and thus he would name the new plane of existence Sanctuary. Together, Lilith and Inarius would rule, with the aid of a council of both angels and demons. Over time, this new world would give rise to wildlife to add to the ambience. Deers, bears, wolves, insects, among other creatures would flourish in this land. Even cows would migrate from time to time. However, some species were met by the swift justice of evolution, with goats eventually becoming goat men and frogs becoming overly enlarged. The bond between angel and demon had swelled within Inarius and Lilith, and the two committed the ultimate crime together, as if allying together and stealing the World Stone wasn't bad enough. The two laid together and mated, giving birth to an entirely new species, mankind, in the form of the Nephilim, who were incredible and powerful beings. The council even went so far as to say that one day their might could rise to a power unseen in their time of angels and demons. However, this did not make the Union fret, as they were still in control. Over a great deal of time, the lands of Sanctuary were very peaceful, with the Nephilim constructing their own civilization. These were the ancients the legends speak of, the very first Nephilim to walk through the world. However, even in times of peace, there will always be the troublemakers, which would have grave consequences when a group of Nephilim would gather together in their thrilling hunts. These four were known as Corvic, Helgrotha, Gratian, and the strongest of the three, Berserk. With his great strength, no animal could escape the hunt they conducted. The four of them were very close. So close, in fact, many would mistake them for being joined by blood. While they had a concept of other species dying by their hands, no Nephilim had perished in these times. However, that was soon to change. One night, Berserk would dream of a spear he held in his hands, one that had been crafted from a cypress tree, one he made himself. He would hold the spear in one hand, and on top of the tower in the Golden City, which had been the location where his companions had slept. As soon as he released it into the air, the spear would travel true and fast over the mountains and into the green steppes. When Berserk had awakened from his captivating dream, he became entranced by it, unable to put it out of his mind. It must have had some kind of meaning, he would think to himself. He would then speak to his companions, demanding that they hunt the Oryx beyond the mountain's reach. They would quickly make the preparations, which had taken 3 days to complete, and they soon made their travels outwards of the settlement and across the mountains, traveling to the plains of the north. On their travels through these mountains, they would come under attack by creatures that were described to look like bloodhawks. However, with their combined might, they would prove too much for the flying monstrosities, and soon continued without a second thought on the slain monsters. Reaching the green steppes, they would begin tracking Oryx trail to the north. This is where Gratian would begin to doubt, and like a plague it would become contagious, with even Berserk beginning to doubt the journey, with the feeling clouding his better judgment. Still they continued, tracking the herd, and soon they found them. A plan was conducted and they managed to corner their prey. However, suddenly, the queen of these Oryx lashed out towards the group of hunters. They had been so stunned by the ferocity that it had left an opening in their formation, and like a cow or a bull, the creature had struck Gratian with her charge. Despite Berserk's attempts to drive the creature away with his axe and spear, the Queen Adama was successful in putting Gratian out of commission, with a kill being placed under her mantle. As the group rushed to Gratian, the herd had made their escape. The three would be shocked by these turn of events, as death had been an alien concept to the Nephilim. Sure, they knew of its existence, but for one of them to die was unheard of. Nephilim are impervious to illnesses, diseases, disabilities, and even time, as they didn't age that much. but death had not been explored by them before. The three would mourn their former companion, standing there in silence, allowing the wind to graze over them, as if they didn't even feel the cold stiffness of the wind. They soon realized that they, the Nephilim, were no different from the beasts that occupied the lands of Sanctuary. They too were not immune from death's hand. As day became night, and the moon rose up to greet them, Eldrotha would state that she would run to the one place she knew that death could not find her. She would give her two friends an embrace before parting ways, leaving for the woodland that she would soon call home, and dissolved into the shadows. Deeply angered by this revelation, Berserk had allowed his fury to consume him, and he would vow to get revenge on his makers for making them mortal. However, Korvik would tell him that the angels and demons were far stronger than any beast that they had come across before. She would take her knives and plunge them into Gratian's corpse, searching for where death had been residing inside him, slashing and tearing the corpse to pieces. She felt defeated, but this soon turned into motivation in finding death for herself. She took the broken and misshapen bones and fashioned them into a sword. Berserk bore witness to the horror until it became all too much for him. He couldn't continue watching his friend tear his other friend into pieces to forge a new weapon. Even without his eyes, his ears would continue to hear the scraping, squelching, and crackling of the actions being conducted by Korvik. Korvik soon had finished constructing the weapon with Gratian's bones, tendons, and cords, and presented it to Berserk, who shrieked in the mere sight of it. The weapon terrified him even more so than the beasts that they had been hunting all this time. He quivered in fear as he touched the bone handle of the sword. Korvik would brand the weapon with a name known as Severin. The blade had been a jagged shape with pieces of bones resembling a fallen branch of bone shards being bound into one by sinew and pieces of uncured hide and flesh. It had been designed to combat the demons and angels, but what was the effect on Nephilim? Berserk would thank her for the blade, but asked what she would do now. She would reply that there are questions that she would put to death, but for now she must find the camp of their hunter before she made her leave. Seeing that she was stained by the blood of Gratian, he suspected that she had already been on this path for quite a while. Regardless, they bid their farewells before walking away on their separate paths. Berserk would travel through the steppes and across the many lands, speaking to the blade as if it had been a companion to him. As if he traveled, he recounted the many times he and Gratian had spoken to one another, where his voice, his great sorrow for his friend's death, which hissed with anger, that soon turned to rage and then to hatred with every step he took. Interestingly enough, the sword had reacted to these tears that fell onto it, along with the words spoken, as if it still contained the essence of Gratian, or perhaps it had been the essence of death, hungering for more flesh to be added to the toll. Eventually, the lone warrior had reached the Temple of the Firstborn, wavering in the sight of the fortress. He would rest first before confronting the two entities, Inarius and Lilith. In his mind, this would mark the end to his revenge, and he would be victorious nonetheless. Instead of the tempting rest, he would rise from the dirt and continued on with his journey, nearly reaching the darkened gates of the structure, where he would meet an individual on the road just shy of the temple. Berserk and the lone Nephilim, Kalmor, would talk amongst each other. Kalmor had been friendly, but soon noticed that something was amiss, and soon the two found that their goals were not aligned and had clashed, to the point where the pair faced off in a duel that continued